Hello everyone, this is Minayab Fatma
This is me, Adila Shaheen.
And this is me, Saida Shafia Kazmi.
and we are here to give a presentation on the topic Constellation in the Night Sky.
We will hope you'll enjoy our presentation. Let's start.
So first of all, we'll start with the definition of constellation. In modern astronomy, any particular region in the sky in which many stars are grouped together is known as constellation. These regions in the sky look more like the borderlines of the countries. Constellation are the name we give to the seeming patterns of stars in the night sky. Stellar is a Latin word for star, and constellation is basically a group of stars or stella. In general, they are not close to each other, but they appear to be close when viewed from the Earth's surface. The first Greek astronomers, Leonidas Ptolemy in the 2nd century, described and named 45 constellations. If we talk more, then there are 88 constellations in which Andromeda, which is also known as Princess of Ethiopia, and Capricorn or Cancer are among of them. If we talk more, then the largest and smallest constellation of the universe are, let me check in this slide. Yes, there are many constellations in the universe, like Virgo, Ursa Major, Cetus, Hercules are also large, but the largest constellation in the universe is Hydra. Hydra is the largest constellation in the universe, measuring 1303 square degrees and often over long 100 square degrees. If we talk about the smallest constellation of the universe, then the smallest constellation is Crux, which is also known as Southern Cross, just because it forms a Latin cross in the sky in the southern hemisphere. If we talk more, then it is the smallest one, just because it is a constellation of just 4 bright stars. And it is impossible that if we look in the sky, we can't observe any constellation, because if we look at the sky, especially in winters, we found there are a number of stars twinkling in the sky. And if we join them together, they form many images, like it can be the Orion, the Great Hunter, the Big Dipper, the Big Dog, the Paradise Bird. So if we look in this region, then these are the regions where the constellations are present, and these look more like the borderlines of the countries. So I would summarize my points as constellation is a group of stars that form a particular pattern. The largest constellation is Hydra, and the smallest constellation is Crux, also known as Southern Cross. I hope you have understood my point very well. Now the other points will be discussed by our second group member, Shafia.
Assalamu alaikum. As you know that we are delivering our presentation on constellation in the night sky. So as you see that our first member group Nayab has given to you information about the constellation, and I want to give more information about constellation. So I am going to start my presentation topic. So when we think about the constellation, the first question comes in our mind is, what is constellation? That is clear to you by our first member group Nayab. That is, the constellation is a particular region of the sky in which the stars are grouped together. Okay, the second question comes in our mind is that why the constellation is called constellation? Why is it called constellation? Because the constellation comes from a Latin word from constellation, which can be translated as set of stars. Okay, the constellation word comes from a Latin word which means set of stars. When the stars are grouped together and form a set, it is called constellation. And the constellation came into in the middle English during in the 14th century. And the next question which comes in our mind when we think about the constellation, that is how the constellations are made. So the constellations, in the definition of constellation, we have learned that the constellation which means the region, the particular region of the sky in which the stars are grouped together and form a pattern picture, which is known as constellation. As you know that the constellation are formed of bright stars which appear close to the earth, to other on the sky. Okay, the constellations are formed when the bright and twinkle stars are grouped together and appeared close to each other when we viewed from the earth, and but is not close to each other when the shapes when we see at the sky, the many constellations of the stars we can see, the shapes are depend on the wave of our point. When we waved on the sky, the constellation can be seen. Okay, the next topic is types of constellation. There are basically two types of constellation. One is circumpolar constellation, and the second one is zodiacal constellation. So the circumtrum is come from a Latin word which means the circum means round and the polar means pole stars. All the circumpolar constellation in the whole universe round around the pole stars, that is known is called circumpolar constellation. The circumpolar constellation is a type of constellation that never be disappeared and can be seen all the year. Okay, there are five circumpolar constellation, which is the first one is Ursa Major, which is known as a Big Dipper, and the second circumpolar constellation is Ursa Minor, which is known as a Little Bear. And the third circumpolar constellation is the Draco the Dragon, which is present between the Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. Okay, the fourth circumpolar constellation is circumpolar constellation is Cepheus the Queen, and the last circumpolar constellation is Cassiopeia the King. When in this constellation, the stars are grouped together and form an like shape. Okay, these are about the first type of constellation, and now the second type of constellation is zodiacal. The word zodiacal is come from a Greek word zodiacus, which means a circle of the little animals. Okay, in this constellation, the stars are represented by different animals like paradise, southern fish, etc. Or this is the type of constellation in which the sun pass through it. And the zodiacal, it is a type of constellation in which the sun pass through it. Okay, these are about the types of constellation. Now, here the examples of constellation. As you see that there are a few examples of the constellation like Mobert, Peak, Balt, Malala, and Serena, etc. Now I am going to discuss these constellations, some examples of the constellation in detail. The first example of constellation is Big Dipper, as you see here. Okay, the patron of the constellation, this constellation is the ball with a handle, and the time when the constellation is appeared is April to June around 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. and the direction of this constellation is North Pole. And the second, and as you see here, the second constellation example of the constellation is Southern Cross, which is the smallest constellation in the whole universe, and it is known as a cross. It is known as a Southern Cross because this constellation formed a Latin cross in the southern hemisphere. That is why it is called Southern Cross. Okay, the pattern of the this constellation is a cross, and the time and in the duration of the time in the duration when this constellation is appeared is start to appear is April to June around 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. and the direction of this southern cross is South Pole. And the third and the last example of the constellation, as you see here, the Scorpion. The pattern of the Scorpion is a scorpion with a head, long body, and a tail. And the time when these constellations are appeared in the sky is June to August, and the direction of this constellation is North Pole. Thank you. And other further the topics will be discussed by our third member group, Adila.
Assalamu alaikum. As you know that my first and second group member discussed about the definition of constellation and they give the example of constellation. Now I will tell you about some usage, some advantages, and some importance of constellation. What are the uses of constellation in our life? First of all, if we talk about the first usage of constellation, that is navigation. Basically, constellations are used in navigation, and the second one is for predicting seasonal changes. Constellation have very important role in cultural, religious, and agricultural purposes. The ancient Greeks used the Orion to know about the floral seasons that helped them to make decisions for agricultural purposes. Constellations are very important, and constellations are also used in art, literature, and mythology. If we talk about constellations, so constellations are very important that the famous and very beautiful art, literature, and mythology have the subject of constellations, and they play a very important role to transfer the information about our tradition and culture to our next generation. Like that, if we talk about constellation, so the astronomers and stargazers use constellations to know about the behavior and properties of the stars and galaxies. Like that, overall, if we talk about the usage of constellations, so constellations are very important. It plays a very important role in our lives. Now let's hear some interesting facts about constellations. So there are so many interesting facts about constellation that is the Orion is visible in the southern winter sky in the northern hemisphere. Interesting facts. First one is the largest constellation by area is Hydra, and it covers basically 3.16% of the sky. And the second one is the smallest in Crix, which covers about 0.17% of the sky. Some portions of the sky, stars within the constellations, are called the asterism. Now let's hear some fun facts about constellations. My dear fellows, the first fun fact about constellation is that the first star other than the sun to be photographed was Vega. In 1992, the sky was divided into 88 constellations that we know today. What is the most important constellation? The question arising here that what is the most important constellation? So the most important constellation is the Big Dipper. Many universally the Big Dipper, according to universal thought, the Big Dipper is thought that it is also it is itself a constellation, but in fact it is not a constellation. It is a asterism within the constellation of the Ursa Major. If we talk about the Big Dipper, so the Big Dipper is universally recognized star pattern or the constellation because it always visible in the northern hemisphere. Now let's towards the Pleiades. The Pleiades are also known as the Seven Sisters and measure 45 and other names by different cultures. If you talk about the Pleiades are formed by bright, young, and hot bee stars, and their location is that they're located in northwest of another constellation named Taurus. They're about 440 light years from the solar system. The Pleiades derive their English name from the Greek legend. They represent the seven daughters of the ocean Nymphoid. Another question is that why is Pleiades so special? Pleiades are very special that they're highly visible stars. The Pleiades were among the most important celestial bodies after the moon, and it is used firstly in astronomy conceptions. Astronomers used first Pleiades for the purpose of astronomy. If we talk about Pleiades, so the rising of Pleiades were highly visible in the astral region at the beginning of the new year and then the agricultural seasons. Last topic is the oldest constellation. The oldest constellation is Taurus Double. Taurus Double is the oldest constellation. It can be seen in the northern hemisphere during the winter and the early spring. Thank you
Thank you so much for your precious time.